I'm Mark Drexler with the Climatographers. The Climate Web is a knowledge management solution structured around the idea of helping to deliver actionable climate knowledge. In E.O. Wilson's terms, it's about helping to get the right information to the right person at the right time to support their decision making. Now, in this video, I'm going to explore one aspect of the Climate Web using this example of if you wanted to solve climate change, who would you invite to the table and what would you talk about? There's obviously a lot to talk about because if you Google solve climate change, you'll get, as of today, 138 million hits. And in fact, thousands of organizations and individuals are working on climate change. Unfortunately, it's a wicked problem. And after 30 years of trying, no obvious solution has presented itself. What if a collective intelligence could be used to create a coordinated and strategic approach to tackling climate change? Now, with that one sentence, you basically understand one of the things that we're trying to do with the Climate Web. Now, I've jumped into the Climate Web itself to further explore this idea of who would you invite to the table and what would you talk about. So here I've pulled together about 100 people that I would suggest as Save the Climate Conference attendees. The Climate Web is tracking thousands of people, and there are plenty of people that could stand in for any of the names on this list. But each of the people here is here for a particular reason, and if you want to freeze the frame and take a look more closely, you can. But let me just show you what you can do. If I go down, for example, to Suzanne Moser, Communications, click on Suzanne, click on her main entry in the Climate Web, and you can basically access her entire body of work, and not only her entire body of work, but many of the ideas that are reflected in that body of work. And you can do this for many of the people on that list. Now, moving from who might you invite to what might you talk about, I'm going to jump to the Save the Climate Conference topics. Obviously, you would never actually try and talk about all these topics, even though they would be good topics to cover if you're trying to have a Save the Climate conversation. It's a lot of topics. And again, all of these are dynamic. And I'm just going to use the example of carbon pricing. It's a deep dive in the Climate Web, one of about 80. But if I click on carbon pricing on this list, it takes us into the carbon pricing index entry. And from here, you can see that you can jump over and look at sources and news stories and videos, knowledge bases. So there are 3,000 index entries in the Climate Web, and this is one of them. But it's an important one because everyone is familiar with carbon pricing. Now, it's not the only thing that you can look at. For example, I can click on headings, put this together, headings for carbon pricing. So these are specific index entries, specific sources in terms of books and reports, headings with hundreds of things, news stories, graphics, videos, knowledge bases, networks. So you can just get a sense of how easy it is to jump to the information about carbon pricing that you might be most interested in. But you can also do a couple of other things in terms of organizing carbon pricing information in any way you might want for purposes of this conference or for other purposes. And I'm going to jump to the Carbon Pricing 101 dashboard. So this dashboard pulls together sort of everything that you really need to know from a Carbon Pricing 101 perspective. And what's great is you can go in here and you'll see in the notes field, this is a video. You can watch the video that pops up here. You can explore websites that pop up here. You can read the news stories that we've organized here as part of the 101. All of this stuff is self-contained, and you can come over and take a look at sort of some of the key thoughts and ideas and summaries that we've put together around the 101 carbon pricing dashboard. But there are other carbon pricing dashboards. I'm just going to click, for example, on Carbon Pricing 202, which is about forecasting carbon prices. And it's similar in concept, but it's very different information. And it's specifically focused on the question of how to estimates of carbon prices in the future. So I've jumped back out of the Climate Web after that very quick introduction to all of a ton of information organized in all kinds of ways to make it accessible as actionable knowledge, the goal here is to help tackle climate change. And so the question is, how can the climate web help support that goal through the idea of a collective intelligence? And I lay this out, and you can look at this in more detail. I would think of the climate web as a minimum viable product for the idea of a collective intelligence. You could never hold the conference that we talked about with those 100 people and those 100 topics. But you can actually hold that conference virtually with the information in the climate web, pulling together the ideas from all of those people into a coherent form. Now, you can use the climate web in various ways through the climatographers, or you can download and utilize it on your own, or you can even take it and morph it into your own knowledge management system. And we're happy to talk about any of those things. I'm going to leave it at that. Contact information is here on the left. I would love to engage in a conversation structured around some of the questions posed in this very short presentation. Thanks.